Hello, and welcome to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed, the podcast where we share quick and practical information. In the time it takes you to go grab a cup of coffee, you'll gain insights into hot topics and pressing HR issues. I'm your host, Nicole Morehouse, and we're glad you're listening. Before we start, here's our usual disclaimer that the information being shared is not and should not be considered legal advice. Now let's dive into our topic. This episode is part 1 of a 2-part series on internal investigations, a very popular but mystifying topic for our members. Today, we have one of MRA's SMEs on this topic, Maria Monteagudo. Maria is part of our HR services delivery team and has an extensive background in handling internal investigations. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Nicole.
Maria is going to help us with some pre-investigation considerations. Preparing before something happens is one of the keys to success when handling employee investigations. Maria is also going to help us identify sometimes often overlooked components of an investigation. So let's get right into it. Maria, let's maybe start with things that you would recommend to keep in mind when an issue or complaint or something similar is reported. What should we be thinking about?
Well, I think the first thing is to not be overwhelmed by the information that's coming to you and really take a time to think about, are the allegations prohibited behavior or illegal behavior, or is it a concern about a work rule violation? It could also be an employee relations matter that if it goes unaddressed, it may rise to problematic behavior. It could be a medical issue. It could be a personal issue. Do we need to make a referral to help the employee deal with whatever medical or personal issue they're going through? As an HR professional, you also have to think about, is there a safety or security concern? And does there need to be any type of intervention to address those concerns? And more importantly, does the behavior represent criminal activity? Because you may need to make an outside referral to a law enforcement agency. So I think taking a moment to think about, what are the allegations about? What am I dealing with instead of reacting to the information is really, really important.
And what about interventions? When you have to intervene, what sort of actions should we be prepared to take should something require an intervention?
Thank you, Nicole. I think sometimes we have to think about, do we have a need to place somebody on leave to minimize the exposure that they may have to the individuals that they're accusing? Do you need to remove or restrict the responsibilities that the person is performing, again, for the same reason, because you want to minimize the interaction? Or is reassigning the employee until the investigation is completed really the best course of action? Again, if there's a safety or security concern, do you have personnel that you need to notify, whether it's your own security team, a risk team that you may have in the company? There might be a need to alert people that there might be a security issue. And I think this is the time to take action on that, is allowing the person to work remotely, something that is feasible. You know, some companies allow people to do that on a regular basis. Some companies are a little more concerned about allowing remote workers. But in this case, I think if the work or some of the work can be performed remotely, it might be worth pursuing that.
And what about evidence? You know, in your pre-investigation recommendations, what are some pieces of evidence that you need to be prepared to seek out and then secure?
Yeah, I think it's really important to right away take a look at any payroll data or HRIS data that you may have available. Are there pictures or videos or any type of email or electronic communications that you need to get your hands on? Are there witness statements that need to be collected and need to be placed, in the file for the record before people start forgetting what happened, when it happened, and who was there? So I think thinking about collecting evidence as soon as possible is really important without compromising the integrity of the investigation, obviously.
Got it. And we're going to talk more about witness interviews and statements in episode 2, so stay tuned for that. For today, let's wrap up with notifications. What kinds of notifications, or what are some notification needs that would arise that we need to keep in mind when conducting an investigation?
I think obviously the first one is to make sure that the person who's filed the complaint knows that you are taking it seriously and that you are going to do an investigation. And then once you've identified the people who are going to be involved, notifying them that there's an investigation, that They are expected to cooperate with the investigation. You have to inform them of the timing of the interviews and what's expected of them during the interview process and the importance of maintaining the integrity of the investigation. Make sure that you schedule those interviews in a way to minimize disruptions. Do it either at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, in a separate private conference room where people are not distracted and other people don't know what's going on because they're probably all going to be talking about, here's the HR team talking to somebody, something's got to be out. So I think, anything that you can do to not compromise the integrity of the investigation and really protect the people from, the speculation that goes on when an investigation is going on is what you need to think about.
That's extremely helpful guidance. And we knew that this was going to be a topic that you could provide a lot of guidance on and give additional information. So we're going to have part 2. So this is obviously a topic that needs revisiting. Thank you so much for joining us today, Maria. And we look forward to hearing from you next time. For our listeners, look for our podcast, look for part 2, wherever you follow MRA, like our website, newsletters, and social media posts. Until then, thank you for listening to MRA's 5-Minute HR Feed. Be sure to follow and connect with us for more podcasts and updates. If you're a member and have questions, you can always connect with MRA's 24/7 HR hotline by emailing infonow@mranet.org or by calling 866-474-6854.